There is a lot of confusion about the changes to legislation, health and safety legislation relating to the self-employed. Basically, a few years ago, a report was undertaken which indicated that self-employed people that pose no risk to others should be excluded from health and safety legislation unless they were engaged in certain high-risk activities. And the government has implemented this legislation with a series of complex sets of regulations which, quite frankly, most self-employed people would have no chance of understanding. And the position is that the self-employed are now excluded from some health and safety legislation if they pose no risk to others and if they're not engaged in specific activities which are listed in the regulations. These include things like construction, agriculture, asbestos removal, etc. So the test is whether the self-employed person, if not working in one of those types of activities, actually poses a risk to anyone else. Self-employed gym instructors, for example, would still be covered by health and safety legislation because they would be putting others at risk in terms of the way they instruct them, the way they guide them, etc. And the risk to many organisations that operate large facilities, for example, a series of gyms or fitness centres, is that the self-employed people might be under some impression they don't have to take any care for what they're actually doing, or they don't have to comply with legislation, and that is actually wrong. The Health and Safety Executive website has a series of good guidance for particular types of individuals in terms of what they need to do from a basic health and safety point of view. I would just caution that do not be confused that you're likely to be exempt from health and safety legislation because you fit into an example given in the HSE website. So these things need to be considered on an individual basis, and for most self-employed people, health and safety legislation hasn't been particularly onerous anyway. There was little required in terms of records and risk assessment statements. There was no requirement for a written policy statement unless you employed 5 people or more. So taking good sensible precautions and documenting what you're doing is probably a pretty good idea.